I would like to say that I'm fully confident that in the
Marilyn Monroe, beauty icon and one of the most famous actresses of the 20th century, known for her signature platinum blonde hair, seductive red lips and makeup, stepped onto the stage in a sparkling dress, sang "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" right in front of the president's wife. That moment not only shook America, but also engraved Marilyn Monroe's name in history as a symbol of charm and scandal. But behind the halo, behind the radiant smile and enchanting looks, was a heart that always yearned for the simplest thing, a sincere love. Why did the woman the whole world desired have to live and die in such loneliness? Click follow to discover the tragic, enchanting and haunting journey of Marilyn Monroe, the beauty icon with a broken heart. On May 19, 1962, at Madison Square Garden, in front of thousands of distinguished guests, Marilyn Monroe stepped onto the stage in a tight, sheer dress that looked as if she were wearing nothing. The dress, decorated with more than 2,500 crystals, held the audience spellbound. Then, her voice rang out like a whisper, "Happy birthday, Mr. President." Slow, sensual, and full of meaning. Sitting just below the stage was First Lady Jackie Kennedy, silent and expressionless. That moment was more than just a cultural icon. It was the turning point that sent Marilyn's life into an inescapable spiral. At 36, Marilyn Monroe was no longer just a movie star. Rumors of her romantic relationship with President John F. Kennedy and later with his brother, Robert Kennedy, were rampant. Although never officially confirmed, it is understood that the relationship is real. The danger is not the love, but the consequences. When the world's most famous sex symbol became involved with two of the most powerful men in America, everything around her became more than love. It was a mystery, pressure, and impending disaster. After that fateful performance, Marilyn seemed to disappear from the spotlight. Studios began to shun her. Major roles stopped coming. She was labeled unstable and out of control. In the months that followed, she faced relentless rumors, career hurdles, depression, insomnia, and a growing dependence on tranquilizers. For a time, she tried to hold down a role in Something's Got to Give, but was eventually fired mid-production due to lateness, exhaustion, and mental breakdowns. On August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her home. The official cause of death was suicide due to an overdose. But to this day, a series of theories persist. Was she silenced because she knew too much? Or was she simply a woman tired of never being truly loved? Click subscribe now. The truth behind it all is waiting to be revealed. Before she stepped onto the stage to whisper "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" and held the world's breath, under the spotlight and scandals associated with President John F. Kennedy, Marilyn Monroe's life was tinged with sadness, with deep and quiet relationships that few people knew about. These relationships were not the noisy, glamorous love affairs that appeared on the front pages of newspapers. They were private, intense, and unforgettable chapters, written in the hidden corners of her heart. The first man to play an important role in bringing Marilyn to the pinnacle of glory was Johnny Hyde, a longtime agent at one of Hollywood's leading talent agencies. When he met Marilyn, Johnny was nearly 50 years old, had heart disease, and knew that his time was running out. However, in her, he saw not only beauty but also raw talent, ambition, and something wild and fragile that touched him deeply. Johnny fell hopelessly in love with Marilyn. He left his wife, estranged his family, and moved in close to her just to be there for her and support her. He proposed to her several times, but although Marilyn recognized his sincere love, she gently refused. Not because she was ungrateful, but because she could not give him a love she herself did not fully feel. "What if I marry you?" she had said. "What if one day I fall in love with someone else?" Her words were sincere, gentle, but full of pain. Still, Johnny gave her everything he had. He arranged minor cosmetic surgeries to boost her self-confidence, helped her build her portfolio, and relentlessly lobbied the studios to support her. He was the one who signed Marilyn to her first major studio contract. Just days later, Johnny died, leaving Marilyn alone in Hollywood, with a debt of gratitude she could never repay. It was the beginning of her meteoric rise to fame and the loss of the first person who had truly loved her without asking for anything in return. Soon after, Marilyn found another kind of connection, deeper and more emotional, with Natasha Lytis, a German acting coach who would become an integral part of her life for nearly a decade. Natasha was more than a teacher. She was a protector, a confidant, someone who would sit with Marilyn for hours, soothing her through panic attacks and quiet storms of anxiety. Their relationship, which was more than friendship, became the stuff of whispered gossip in Hollywood. Natasha once confessed, "I wanted to be loved by her." Marilyn, always private about her private feelings, chose to keep Natasha by her side during the most uncertain years of her career. Natasha guided everything. The way Marilyn spoke, the way she moved, the way she dressed, the way she acted. She followed Marilyn to film sets, clashed with directors, and protected her from the rigors of the entertainment industry. Some say Natasha loved Marilyn blindly. Others say Marilyn just needed someone, anyone, who would never betray or abandon her. Natasha was that person. But as Marilyn grew more confident, her dependence on Natasha became too much. She wanted her own space, wanted to take control of her career, and step out of Natasha's shadow. The final breakup came in a cold but clear telegram. "I no longer need coaching." Natasha left, heartbroken, silent, and forever damaged. Johnny and Natasha, a man who sacrificed everything to bring her to the top, and a woman who poured her soul into shaping Marilyn from the inside, were the two invisible pillars of Marilyn Monroe's life. They weren't on the covers of magazines. They weren't with her on the red carpet, but they were there when she fell apart behind the scenes. They loved her in ways no one else ever did. So which men were her husbands? Let's go back in time to when Marilyn was still a teenager. Marilyn, then known as Norma Jean, a 16-year-old girl who had grown up without love, married James Dougherty in 1942. This marriage, despite her youth, became the turning point that pulled her out of the shadows and into the spotlight. James was a Navy sailor, simple, honest, and completely uninterested in fame or Hollywood glamour. They lived like a normal couple, hardworking, independent, and spending simple days together. James loved Norma Jean as a wife, and she considered him her rock before she became Marilyn Monroe. But when she began to attract attention, their relationship began to crumble. She longed for freedom and change, while he could not share that dream. In 1946, after Marilyn signed her first film contract and began modeling, James realized that their paths were no longer the same. They divorced peacefully, without conflict, a gentle separation as they both drifted apart in their own ways. By 1954, Marilyn was shining in major roles. At that time, she met Joe DiMaggio, the baseball legend, the man who was considered Romeo in her life. They married in January 1954, surprising the public. A famous athlete and a Hollywood sex symbol joined their lives. Joe loved Marilyn with all his heart and with stability. He hoped she would live a normal life, without scandal and out of the limelight. But Marilyn was a firebrand, a passionate artist who lived for creativity and emotional truth. Their marriage quickly became a struggle. Joe, out of love, became possessive, vulnerable, and sometimes too controlling for Marilyn's independent spirit. After just 274 days, they divorced. But the divorce did not end their bond. Joe maintained a special relationship with Marilyn even after their separation. He accompanied her to doctor's visits, cared for her during her respite, and, most notably, arranged for roses to be sent to her grave every week for 2 decades after her death. Years after her separation from Joe, Marilyn found her eventual husband, the man many believe was the one for her, Arthur Miller, the famous playwright. They met in 1956 at an art gallery, where Arthur was drawn to the sensitive, vulnerable woman beneath her fierce exterior. They married in June 1956, a marriage filled with passion but also tension. She was a famous actress, he was an intellectual playwright. Their life together was marked by long nights of debate about scripts, cinema, art, and politics. Marilyn loved deeply and wanted to be the ideal wife. She studied, invited Arthur to her film shoots, and even tried writing plays with him. But their differences in mentality and lifestyle created tension. Marilyn suffered 2 miscarriages, each of which forced her to confront old wounds. Arthur had difficulty coping with the pressures of her fame. Gradually, the distance between them grew, and by 1961 they were divorced amicably, although the impact of the marriage on Marilyn's life was profound. Although she had always longed to be a mother, Marilyn Monroe never had children. She had several pregnancies that ended in miscarriage or ended in termination due to health and emotional instability. Each loss of a child was a great shock to her. She withdrew into silence and struggled with a void that nothing could fill. In her diary, she once wrote, "I dreamed of a child. A boy, brown hair and sad eyes, a dream I never got to realize." In her later years, as her fame faded and her relationships fell apart, Joe DiMaggio, her second husband, remained quietly by her side. Despite their divorce, Joe still called to check in, sent flowers every week, and arranged Marilyn's funeral when no one else would. Many believe that Joe was the man who truly loved her, not for her fame, but for the real woman behind the sex symbol image. Marilyn Monroe died at the age of 36, leaving behind a world full of unanswered questions about love, loneliness, fame, and the high price of fame. Her life was not just a series of scandals or sexy photos. It was the quiet journey of a woman who wanted to be truly loved and simply be herself in a world that demanded perfection. Although she had no children and never found lasting love, perhaps Marilyn left another legacy, a timeless message that behind beauty and fame is a wounded soul, worthy of being heard and understood. Despite her radiant, captivating appearance, Marilyn Monroe was actually battling an inner storm, something that the spotlight could not hide forever. Scans and medical reports later revealed serious health conditions that she had been silently suffering for years: anxiety disorders, chronic insomnia, and nerve damage from the abuse of sedatives and sleeping pills. Her body gradually became exhausted by her dependence on the pills, the only thing that helped her temporarily escape the long, empty nights and the obsession with betrayal and loneliness. The scans showed that her nervous system was severely affected, with typical manifestations of a person with a prolonged emotional disorder. More importantly, experts at that time had warned of the risk of clinical depression, but that voice was forgotten amid the glitter of fame and the indifference of those who only cared about her external image. Marilyn's physical condition was no better. Her immune system was weakened, she was chronically fatigued, and she suffered from chronic pain that often forced her to postpone shoots or be hospitalized in silence. All of these signs pointed to a heartbreaking truth: behind the glamour was a woman who was slowly losing herself. Those scans were more than just medical numbers, they were the final pieces of the puzzle that painted a tragic portrait of Marilyn Monroe. A global icon, but also a lonely heart, a fragile soul eroded by expectations and wounds that never healed. If you feel the same way, if you believe that every famous figure has a quiet side that the world has never seen, then don't forget to subscribe today. The untold stories of Marilyn Monroe and other icons will continue to be revealed. Don't miss it.